I wish you didn't hate me. I wish a lot of things. I wish my life was different. I wish I'd go to sleep. I wish you'd take a listen. I wish you'd talk to me. I wish my bed was yours now. And we would fall asleep.
Hello, my name is David. I just came back from TYPO Berlin 2017 and I wanted to make this video to share some of my experiences and kind of give a little summary of what happened during this last long weekend. So I attended TYPO, which is Europe's, I guess, one of the biggest or probably the biggest design conference for the very first time this year. And I have to put a disclaimer up front, I won a ticket. Well, I participated in a giveaway by Smashing Magazine on Twitter. This is my tweet. And I won, and so I didn't have to pay for the ticket. That's the disclaimer up front. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because I didn't have to pay for the ticket itself. I did have to pay for flights. I had to travel from Austria to Berlin. I also had to pay for, Airbnb, food, all of that stuff. And overall, I paid about 450 euros for the whole trip, excluding the ticket. So student tickets are, overall, tickets are pretty expensive, although you do also get a lot for your money. If you're early bird, then your ticket is only 200 euros as a student. For adults, it's much more expensive. I'll put the prices on the screen right now so you can take a look for yourself. Registration for TYPO 2018 is already open, so if you want to ensure that you are early bird, then go ahead, book your ticket. I just want to share some of my experiences, mainly because I realized over these last 3-4 days that a lot of stuff has happened. I barely can remember the first day of TYPO, because if you go to TYPO for a nice relaxed holiday, then I think you're at the wrong place. You just get so much information and so much inspiration that you definitely leave with, your head being fuller than before, which is a good thing. That's why I went there. That's why I think everyone should go there. Otherwise it would be kind of a waste of money. But just know that there have been a lot of things happening, and I'll definitely miss, a bunch of stuff in this video. So yeah, as I said, TYPO is probably Europe's biggest design conference. It happens yearly. It happens in Berlin. It takes place at the Haus der Kultur in der Welt, which is, just to start things off, a beautiful building. The architecture is really wonderful. It's right next, or pretty much in, the Tiergarten in Berlin, close to Reichstag, close to the Bundeskanzleramt, close to a lot of really famous attractions. It's very close to the main railway station in Berlin, so it's really easily reachable, and there are a lot of hotels in the area. So overall, the location is wonderful, and the location, I think, is very well suited to an event like TYPO, mainly because TYPO, at least this year, I think it was always like that last year or so, and it will definitely go on like that, has different tracks at the same time. So it's not like you just sit in one room, listen to a bunch of talks and go home. You can choose between different talks and workshops that happen at the same time. So this year TYPO had 5 tracks in total, of which 2 were workshop tracks. So interactive things where one guy or girl stood at the front, gave a little lecture, and then you could experiment yourself. These were obviously very much typography focused, as the name of TYPO already implies, but there were also a bunch of other workshops as well. And then there were 3 other stages. The main stage is where basically the headline acts take place, is the hall, which is the big auditorium in the Haus der Kultur, and I think probably maximum were 1,500 people or so in the auditorium itself. So it's really massive. Then there's also the show, which is a little bit of a smaller stage, also in the Haus der Kulturen, where, I don't know, maybe 200 people or so find room. And then there's also the stage. Basically, for the 3 days the TYPO took place, Thursday, Friday and Saturday, you could pretty much at any point choose between, 3 to 5 different things that happened at the same time. Now, this does sound kind of stressful, and I mean, it's a luxury first world problem, but it was kind of stressful. I mean, you found yourself very often with this thing, which is the booklet, the brochure that you get at the very beginning when you collect your name tag and your goodie bag. That's also very wonderful. You get a obviously personalized name tag, otherwise it wouldn't be a name tag, with your name, obviously, and your location, which I found really helpful, both the name and the location, because, as I said in one of the many tweets that I tweeted during TYPO, follow me on Twitter if you want, TYPO to me just felt like walking through my Twitter feed in real life. What I mean by that is, I follow a lot of designers and developers, and you basically just assume that that's what happens. You follow them on Twitter, but you never really interact in person. And then actually you come to TYPO and suddenly you see all of these faces and you just think to yourself, well, actually, I think I know this guy from somewhere. And then you realize probably you followed them on Twitter and sent them a message once or whatever. And if you're not sure, you can just take a little peek at the name tag and know who it is. And that's actually very helpful. So it's just a very nice way to connect and to also realize how many different countries are actually a TYPO. Around 80% are German speaking, and then around 20% basically come from all over the world. Of course, a lot of the speakers are international. And one of the wonderful things about TYPO, and I guess this also goes hand in hand with it taking place at the Haus der Kulturen, is that they offer translation. For anyone who only speaks German or only speaks English, you could just pick up free headphones, just plug them in, and you get a translation right into your ear in both the hall and the show. Also, before I went to TYPO, I thought I'd probably be kind of an odd one out because I'm only 18, and I thought, mainly TYPO would be like the established design scene. Actually, it's not that way at all. I mean, I probably was one of the youngest attendees, but there were a lot of students from other schools, and I would just assume that there really isn't any person who wouldn't feel at home. If you're a little bit passionate about design or typography or branding, or even like just general the creative industries, you will feel at home there because they really do everything to make you feel at home. One of the greatest things as well is how well it's organized. Obviously, I think it's like the 22nd TYPO, which is insane. And they just know how stuff has to work. So registration, I've been to other festivals or events where you had to queue for hours because they hadn't provided enough people, enough check-ins or whatever. That's not the case at TYPO. At least whenever I checked in and whenever I was close to a check-in area, they had a really nice system alphabetically. They had a lot of volunteers and people working there, and generally the whole event was very well organized. There were some moments obviously where you couldn't get into certain rooms because they were just full. That happens. Overall, they were very punctual, which I really appreciate. Punctual, not we'll start 5 minutes late, but they always started on the minute. Generally, it was very, very punctual, unless, some speaker just went overtime. And then also, they were very focused on getting him or her to, shut up and have the next speaker on. So, overall, it's a very, very German event. It's very well organized. You feel very much at home, and that's something that I just really enjoyed. One of the things that I found a little bit weird, to be honest, was the people speaking in between who introduced the individual speakers. They were either not prepared enough by the organizers, or something always felt off. First of all, very often I don't think you actually need to introduce the speakers. Most of the people in the room know who they are anyway, or they looked them up beforehand. And even if they didn't, most of the speakers had like a beginning slide where they introduced themselves anyway. And then sometimes like the introduction, like I think there were 1 or 2 cases where the introduction was actually interesting because the speaker and the introductory person spoke beforehand, and they had some like interesting tidbits to offer and to some like stories to tell. But generally, like I mean, sometimes they said stuff like on the website it says that they blah 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 blah, and honestly, I mean, most people probably went on the website before, and anyway, even if they didn't, that's like an information that everyone can look up. So I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's needed, although of course it ties the whole event together quite nicely. What I found a great idea was whenever there was an English-speaking speaker on stage, they introduced them in English, and whenever they were German, they introduced them in German. So you had enough time to adjust your headphones, take them out, whatever. But when the like English level isn't so high and they have to like ask for words from the audience during the introduction, that just feels a little weird. So again, both like wonderful people, and you could tell sometimes they really thought of interesting questions, because after each talk they tried, when there was enough time, they tried to ask some questions to kind of, you know, ask about topics that were covered somewhat in the presentation but maybe didn't go into enough depth or whatever, which I also thought was a great idea. But then again, like some of the questions they actually answered during the talk itself. Anyway, long tangent, not that important. The talks overall were really interesting. So what was great is the whole TYPO this year was very, very deep in a way, which was good. Design too often, and I also wrote this in a tweet, design too often is just about like making pretty surfaces, doing wonderful looking things, but designers do, I think, sometimes miss what's actually important. The introductory talk by Susanne Köbel, who is a correspondent for the German newspaper Der Spiegel in war zones, I mean, it had pretty much nothing to do with design at all, and it was wonderful. She just spent an hour telling us about her work, and it put the whole thing like into perspective, and basically told all of the designers in the room, look, it's not that important whether you choose this typeface or this typeface. It's not that important whether it's pink or it's blue. There are some like underlying thoughts that we have to consider. And I think that was, for the most part, a theme that ran for the whole conference. This idea of like making a difference. That was, I think, very nice. It was also political, which I think is great. I don't think you can do anything non-political, at least not in 2017, and I don't think you should. People took a stance, people apologized, Americans came on stage and apologized for Trump. It was a very deep conference in a way, for lack of a better word, and I think that's great and it's wonderful, and they should keep it that way. One thing that I will say is, funnily enough, some of the talks that I really looked forward to, because I knew the people already and they were kind of like idols or people you looked up to, actually kind of failed my expectations, which was probably just because I had high expectations for them. And then there were some talks by people that I didn't know, where I basically just said, well, I really don't know these people, but it sounds interesting and they're in the hall, so I'll just spend some time here. And they were the most interesting and exciting and enlightening and inspiring talks I've ever heard. I think one of the most inspiring talks was by Dominic Wilcox. I didn't know him beforehand, and I just sat in the hall and thought, I'll just stay here for a bit, and it was a really interesting talk. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. One of the weirdest parts of TYPO was during Erich Spiekermann's talk, where I sat in the second row. Also, another tip, at least at this year's TYPO, no places were reserved for anyone. So you could just walk into the first row, sit down next to one of the upcoming speakers, and just sit there if you wanted. And to be honest, I did that fairly often. Not the first row, I mostly looked for seats in the second row, but that just meant that I, actually got to see the whole thing up close, which I think is really important. During the talk, a woman at the back stood up and just started like heckling his talk basically, and started shouting things, and like most of the stuff I didn't even understand, but everyone was just very confused and very shocked, and I'm like not exactly sure what happened afterwards, whether she like got kindly asked to leave the room, which again, like everyone was so nice about it. I mean, it's really quite wonderful how nice all of the staff on site are. They are really wonderful. So anyway, that was like the weirdest thing. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I guess she wanted to give feedback directly and not in a YouTube video like I do 1 week later. Yeah, that was interesting. So anyway, I've already talked like way too much. To summarize, I would say it was wonderful. It was really great. Even though I traveled alone and only knew a limited number of people there, it was still a really great experience. One thing that I would like to do if I attend again next year, and I tweeted again saying that the chances are pretty high, even if I have to pay the ticket by myself. One thing that I would look out for is traveling with someone else, or at least arranging a few like meetups or hangouts beforehand. Just because, you have some time there. You have coffee breaks, you have the TYPO night, which is the after show party on Saturday, and I think it just makes the whole thing even better if you meet up with people. Also, I think if you go to TYPO, be ready to be surprised. There will be people that you might have absolutely no idea about in the beginning, but that end up surprising you and inspiring you in ways that you really couldn't have predicted. So be ready for that. And also just be ready to spend 3 kind of exhausting but really wonderful days there. But again, there's just like so much stuff happening, so much input, and you leave and you wish for like 1 more week of holidays or free time just to go through all of the talks again. One thing that I forgot to mention that is really important is included in the price is an online access to My TYPO, which is a service where you can view pretty much all of the talks in the hall and in the show afterwards. So even if you didn't make it to one of the talks, if you came a little bit late, or if you were in another room, you can rewatch the talks online later on. And I found myself actually rewatching some of the talks already on the flight back, or on train journey home. I already rewatched some of the talks that I actually saw, just because I knew they were really great, but I couldn't exactly remember everything about them, just because so much stuff happened. So that's really great, and I honestly will probably access that throughout the next year, and it basically is just a constant stream of inspiration. You can always go back to that archive, which is really great. If you can't tell already, I really liked my time there. Overall, really great conference. So if you're interested as well, you can already, book your ticket. The link is in the description. Also, if you have any additional questions, you can ask me. You can write me an email or write a comment below this video. I definitely forgot a bunch of stuff, but this video is already way too long, so I'll end it here. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.